Hi, it's Tammy Phillips. I'm going to talk about the conduction of an action potential. Before an action potential can even start, it's important to remember that there are already uneven concentrations of ions over the membrane. Potassium ions are at a higher concentration inside the cell, while sodium ions are at a higher concentration outside the cell. The membrane is also more permeable to potassium ions than to sodium ions. So the potassium ions move down the concentration gradient to leave the cell at a greater rate than the sodium ions enter the cell. And this leads to a potential difference being set up across the membrane of about -70 millivolts. An action potential begins when voltage-gated sodium ion channels open. This leads to an influx of sodium ions coming down their concentration gradient, and the cell membrane begins to depolarize. This leads to the opening of more sodium ion channels, so the membrane depolarizes even further. This continues until all of the available sodium ion channels are open, and the action potential reaches a peak of about +40 millivolts. The action potential is generated at the axon hillock, and it is propagated down the axon. When it reaches the end of the axon, tiny molecules called neurotransmitters are released from the end of the axon. The more positive potential difference that causes the channels to deactivate so that no more sodium can enter the cell. As the polarity of the cell membrane reverses, voltage-gated potassium channels also open, leading to an outward flow of potassium ions. These stay open even as the sodium ion channels inactivate, so that the membrane potential becomes more negative again. The resting potential is restored by the sodium-potassium pump, which continuously pumps out 3 sodium ions for every 2 potassium ions. The resting potential is reached when all of the forces balance out, and the difference in the voltage between the inside and the outside of the neuron is measured. It remains in the resting state until it is stimulated again and the process begins all over again. I also made a picture of a chart that shows more of a grading where it goes from resting potential as it goes up and hits a peak, then it comes back down to repolarization, hyperpolarization, and then it's again at the resting potential. Thank you.